All right, we'll call the meeting to order. For those that would like to join us, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Edmeades. Here. Mrs. Fish. Here. Dr. Gatachu.
Here.
Mrs. Gordon. Here. Mr. Gordon.
Here.
Dr. Gursky. Mr. Kirsch.
Here.
Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Thank you, Terry. Can I get a action to approve the meeting minutes from October 12th, 2021?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second by Bonnie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we had an executive session today from 6 o'clock to 6:53 to discuss contracts and agreements and consultation with attorney regarding litigation. Next on the agenda is board administrative announcements. Do you have anything from Columbia Montour Votech? Anybody have any fill-in? Okay, Mr. Huron's not here. Head Start, Mr. Reichert.
Yes, we had a meeting with Head Start. The attendance was a little bit light, but we made do with what we had. We elected officers. We actually got enough people to volunteer and step up and take the new positions, so that worked out. And the other thing we had talked about is we're a little bit light in count for school children. We're still out there trying harder to get a few more. Our numbers are down a little bit, but things are going well besides that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the CSIU Trust meeting. Is that Christina?
That's me.
Okay.
So the CS Trust met, and three major highlights is that medical funding holiday was set for September 21 and September 22. No payment for insurance would be due for, I can't read my writing, for experience. The preliminary rates were approved for 22-23, and they are not to exceed the average of an increase of 5.3. And EAP services, Employee Assistance Program services will now be available for Capital Blue Cross membership through the CS Trust.
Thank you. Athletic Committee, Mr. Gordon.
Yes, we had new batting cages installed on the upper gym to be used by our softball and baseball teams, so we can start getting our teams in there a little earlier for preseason workouts. Girls tennis finished as PHAC division champions and had a great showing at districts. Our cross-country teams compete in the district meet Thursday at Bloomsburg University. Registration is currently open in Family ID for all winter 2022 sports. Please check your email for further instructions. The high school gym floor is currently being resurfaced by Miller Flooring. Also, many players from the class of 1962 were present at last Friday's homecoming victory over Shamokin. It was great. It was a great event, and they got to take part in the coin toss and were introduced pregame. Our boys soccer team enters the district tournament as a top seed in AAA, which starts this Saturday. Our football team is battling for a top district seed entering playoffs, which start next Friday. Also, the district playoffs are a major undertaking. For those of you who don't know, I'm part of the District 4 committee as well, and there is an enormous amount of planning that goes on for every district playoff, and the $6 admission ticket barely covers our expenses. That's all I have.
Thank you. Policy Committee, Mr. Gatachu, or Dr. Gatachu.
We had our meeting today at 5:30, a half-hour meeting, and we went through some policies. Some of them are here in the policy section and section 13, and we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Thank you. Next thing, Superintendent's report, please.
Welcome, everyone. Jeff, As always, we go through the enrollment first. We now have 2,840 students that are school-aged in the district, where 2,261 attend the Danville Public Schools. In Head Start, we have 89 students. In the primary building, we have 518. In Liberty Valley, we have 520. In the middle school, 503. High school, 630. And we currently have 125 students at the Columbia Montour Votech. And as you can see by the numbers, we now are at 51 students in outside cyber schools, so that's one less than last month. And we are at 97 students in our Ironman Cyber Academy. We've also had some donations this month. We had the Danville School District was contacted by a community member who was leaving the area and wanted to donate art supplies to the district. So the high school art department was happy to accept the supplies, which are a small assortment of mixed paper stock, mediums such as charcoal, oil, paint, pencils, paintbrushes, and other assorted art items. There's also some resource books that were included in the donation, and we greatly appreciate this donation because it does directly benefit our students. Additionally, we had a faculty member provide a check for $125 for the middle school fall festival. So we're very thankful to Julia Myers and her husband for that donation. And the district has donated 248 books from the Liberty Valley Library to the Thomas Beaver Free Library in town, so the students can go there and enjoy them. We're trying to make sure we have a community to school connection in these areas. And also we had a backlog or of storage of 97 English language literature books. They are 2008 editions, so we no longer use them, and they're really not something that we would get really much money for, so we've donated them to Central Columbia, who the superintendent there discussed it with me to help backlog what they're needing. At the Danville High School, Kyle told you about the 1962 team members who showed up for the game. They're there on the top of the slide. We also had other homecoming events, the homecoming courts walking onto the field. Our homecoming king and queen are there. And we also have a great big, I guess, senior picture. Is that right, Mr. Wynn, of the group? Okay. So that was the relay walk for Mackenzie's charity? Okay, very good. And can you give me the names of the students who are king and queen, please? Oh, well, that's the one I received, so I don't know. Sorry about that. Nobody gave me a new one. All right, go for it. Middle school, there's a whole lot happening at the middle school. This week is Stomp Out Bullying, Red Ribbon Week. Additionally, they have a fall festival happening on the 28th. We do have Professional Development Day on October 29th. There is no school for students on that day, so they're packing their 4 days with a lot of good activities for the students in order to improve the thoughts about bully prevention and to help students just become stronger students in their choices. Additionally, on that one, sorry about that, Jeff, our middle school cross-country team competed in Lackawanna Invitational at McDade Park in Scranton, and they ran on tough courses against over 20 other schools. So we want to congratulate the team who won first place. The girls won first place, and the boys who won second place. Excellent job, cross-country team. All right. The Liberty Valley Intermediate School also did Rock Your School Day, so there are some of the activities that were happening. They had a maze that they went through virtually. The students all worked together to come up with the answers and figure out how to get through that maze and escape the area. One of the things I really want to stress is Liberty Valley Elementary School has been named one of the best elementary schools in the state under the U.S. News rankings. We're number 359 out of 3,784 elementary schools in the state. The primary school, the Rock Your School Day was extremely successful. The Pelican snowballs were there to give the students a treat. We thank the Homeschool Association for making those arrangements. We also have various people dressing up as rock stars. Of course, our office ladies decided that they had to join the festivities, and the students really had a great time. We thank the students from the high school who came down, cheerleaders and band, to create a parade atmosphere. The students were really excited. The other piece up in the corner, the video, is for the trunk or treat that'll be happening tomorrow night. So I'd like that to go on so you can see their little advertisement for it. Oh, no sound?
Sure. Where are you going? Trunk or treat. What's with the cans? For freedom friends. Can I come? Sure.
What they're doing is the students have a canned good, so part of the entrance into the trunk or treat is to provide a canned good, and that goes with the
October
feed a friend.
27th. Don't forget your
A
cans.
little bit later, but that's how they have done that. So trunk or treat is tomorrow night. It is a joint community option where we have Kitty's Commotion and the Trinity Church are participating in helping plan that and make the arrangements. Some additional things that are happening is Fall Dress-Up Day at the primary school is on Thursday the 28th, and they too are doing some red ribbon activities this week in their classrooms. Again? No, okay, back up. Thank you. District-wide, we've got some upcoming dates. On Friday is a professional development day, no school for students. On November 2nd, we expect report cards to go out. And I want to remind people that November 2nd is also the day to go vote. So please get out there and cast your votes. On the 4th in the evening and on the 5th during the day, there are parent-teacher conferences across the district. We have some information on Parent Portal that will be coming out, and it's going to be extremely important that parents sign up, because come January, that report card will be online only. We will not be mailing report cards in January. It'll be stuck with online only, so parents will be able to access. If there's parents who do not have access to internet and cannot get it that way, they just have to notify their building, and the building will then make sure they get a copy of the report card. The PASS survey is going to be more information sent home, but it's a survey, very short survey for students to identify things that are happening for them, part of our social emotional, to get a gauge on how students are doing. It's not an in-depth situation, so we'll be sending things home for grades 3 to 8 on that. Wake Up and Learn survey, you're going to learn more about that here in a few minutes. And of course, Feed a Friend is across the district, so the cans can come in between now and I believe it's November 5th. And there's our COVID update. We have had a tiny uptick this past week with numbers. The red numbers are students who are living with someone who has determined positive. So there are what we call probables. The blue numbers are those that have been confirmed as being a positive case. So you can see that, you know, there's quite a few students who are living in a house where a parent or another sibling has been identified as having COVID. So the spread isn't within our buildings. It is actually what's coming in from the community. So we're trying to keep as many sick kids home as possible, and we really appreciate, since we've had our closings, that parents are being very careful with that, and we thank them for that effort, because we know that does sometimes create a hardship for families. So thank you very much. I think that's it for me.
Lots of cool stuff. Thank you. Now is the time for our first public comment section. First of two in this meeting. Please be reminded that this is for agenda topics only and a time limit of 3 minutes. Is there any public comment? Okay. Our first presentation is Wake Up and Learn by Dr. Anne Marie Morse. So we'll give her the floor. Welcome.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It's
Okay.
on.
Perfect.
You can pick it up.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Do you mind if I stand up there? Okay. All right. All right. So my name is Dr. Anne Marie Morse. I'm the Director of Child Neurology and Pediatric Sleep Medicine at Janet Weiss Children's Hospital, Geisinger. I'm also the founder of Wake Up and Learn. This is a school-based sleep education and surveillance program that we successfully piloted last year at Montgomery School District, and I'm going to go into a little bit about it. Please, next slide. So today I'm just going to try and briefly go through some brief sleep basics. Is sleep a problem in kids? What is Wake Up and Learn? Some of our preliminary results that we did in Montgomery School District, and how potentially Danville School Districts can be involved. So for those of you who have already heard this presentation, I apologize for some repetition. Next slide. So next slide. So I always like to start off with what sleep is not, because I think it's really important. So sleep is not, click, just a period of inactivity, click, a temporary coma, click, or something to fill time when a person is inactive. And although many times when I present this slide, and I present it in every single presentation I do, people think I put it in for comical relief because we are a society of sleep deprivation. But these are in fact our true representations of medical literature of what we used to believe sleep was. And the reason for that is because up until the 1950s, we really didn't have any understanding. In the 1950s, we developed EEG and we were able to understand what the electrical activity of the brain does. Next. And it's definitely not optional. Being a person who comes from New Jersey, trained in New York, I very frequently heard, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Or I can get away with 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep. Next slide. What it actually is a brain-derived homeostatic process. And what that means is that it's something that your body must do. When I describe this, I specifically utilize medical terminology, but then make an analogy to something that you're all familiar with, your body temperature. Your body temperature should be a balmy 98.6. However, if today you woke up and your body temperature was 94 or 104, you wouldn't be sitting here. You would have went running to your doctor, and not because of the fact of what that absolute number is, but what that number represents. That number represents that your body's in dysfunction. And when you leave that body in dysfunction and left unattended, what happens? You die. When you look at sleep, that same knee-jerk reaction should occur. The typical adult should be sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night, but if you're sleeping 4 or 14, medical society would say, you should sleep more. The reality is that you should have that same call to action, that you should be worried that your body is in dysfunction. In fact, when you look at animal models who are subjected to either food deprivation or sleep deprivation, who dies first? Those who are sleep deprived. So the reason we use it in the military as a means of torture is for a very specific reason. It's something that our bodies must go through. Next slide. So why is sleep important? One, it helps your brain make memories, improving learning and performance in school. This is highly relevant to you guys as key stakeholders here. Why is that important? Is because when a person is sleep deprived, their attention is impaired, they're unable to actually make those memories. In fact, when you talk about the process of learning, it's broken down into 3 stages. It's the acquisition, which is what we're doing right now, consolidation, and then retrieval. 2 of those are occurring in school. Consolidation is what's occurring during this sleep. And specifically, different stages of sleep contribute to different types of learning and that consolidation. Next slide. It helps your body stay healthy with keeping a normal immune system. During a global pandemic, we really have seen this. We've seen that individuals who have pre-existing sleep disorder breathing have worse outcomes related to COVID. We also have seen that COVID has resulted in people developing COVID-somnia, not being able to actually sleep after they experience it. And so COVID is not the only thing that has contributed to this understanding, but we do know that individuals who are chronically sleep deprived are actually in a pro-inflammatory state and make them more susceptible to illness. Next. It helps you do better in sports by optimizing reaction time, speed, and accuracy. I always make sure my students hear this because the fact that many times they're prioritizing their sports over their academics. And the reality is that many Major League Baseball teams, football teams, and even Olympians have sleep doctors as part of their team. One of my close colleagues, Chris Winters, he is one of the sleep providers for the Philadelphia Phillies. And so he goes to spring training every year to make sure that they're optimized sleep for they optimize their performance. Next. It also helps you get better after injuries, especially traumatic brain injury. So individuals who experience traumatic brain injury, 70% of them will have a sleep disorder. Individuals who have pre-existing sleep disorders are more inclined to experiencing traumatic brain injury. Next slide. And finally, it helps your mood and behavior. I always really very much want to emphasize this because of the fact that part of the reason of developing Wake Up and Learn and also some other support groups that I've developed at Geisinger is because of the alarming trend that we all have seen. In the past 10 years, we've seen 85% rise in suicidality and suicide completion in adolescents. Sleep is actually a risk factor for that to happen. And so this is a navigatable risk factor. Next slide. So our problems with our sleep disorders are a problem in pediatrics. Next slide. So it's estimated that 25 to 30% of children and adolescents have a sleep problem. However, that risk is even higher in those who have other medical or psychiatric conditions. As a neurologist, 50 to 80% of the patients I see are expected to have a sleep disorder. That's the same is true for other psychiatric and other chronic medical conditions. Next slide. So what might you be seeing in school? Click. Irritability and mood swings, again. Deterioration in school performance, again. Excessive daytime sleepiness or falling asleep in school, again. Frequent tardiness due to oversleeping, click. ADHD symptoms, this is one I think is really important. The American Academy of Pediatrics, this is one of the few stances that they have. If you have a person who you're suspecting ADHD, you should do a sleep evaluation before starting them on a stimulant therapy, because many children who actually have symptoms of ADHD don't have ADHD as a primary diagnosis. They actually have a sleep problem that when corrected don't require medication. Next. And risk-taking behaviors. Again, this is really important. As I talked about risk-taking behaviors in terms of self-harm, we also recognize is that if you have adolescents and you match them, one who is having sleep deprivation and one who doesn't, the one who has sleep deprivation is more inclined to use risk-taking behaviors such as experiencing with substance abuse or substance use and developing substance abuse. It also is a risk factor for those who do have those types of behaviors and achieve abstinence for relapse. Next slide. So what is Wake Up and Learn? Next slide. Wake Up and Learn is a virtually delivered school-based sleep education and surveillance program. It was developed to educate on sleep disturbances, define the consequences of problematic sleep, replace this idea of valor for little sleep, improve recognition of sleep disorders, but not just recognizing them, but actually provide also guidance on how to correct these sleep disorders and involve important key stakeholders in student success. Why do I choose a school-based program? Is because as a physician, I recognize that I need to meet the patient where they're at, and they're in school the majority of their time. And so it makes sense, instead of disrupting their schedule and bringing them into the office, to try and meet them where they're at the majority of the time. Next slide. What we do is we provide universal screening using validated sleep screeners, the Childhood Sleep Habits Questionnaire and Epworth Sleepiness Scale. This gives us just a gauge as to whether or not is this patient at risk. If we identify that they're at risk, then what we do is we invite them to actually complete another virtual, very comprehensive survey that actually allows me to be very specific of what type of sleep disorder they have and be able to give them and their parents guided recognition of this is what you can do. Because of anti-Stark laws, which, again, this isn't for me to garner more referrals for sleep medicine, but anti-Stark laws prevent me from saying, you have a sleep problem, come see me at Geisinger. What I do is I actually provide them a letter saying, this is what's going on. This is a list of all the sleep providers that are available, Geisinger or non-Geisinger, and this is the tips and tricks of how you can remedy that, okay? In addition to the scheduled screening, there also is availability as needed screening if symptoms were to develop later on. Next slide. So what was our first round results? So when we did this at Montgomery School District, there were about 400 students who were invited to participate. We had an 85% completion rate who completed both surveys. Of that, 63% had pathologic childhood sleep habits questionnaires scores. This was the more broad score of saying, do you have sleep pathology? The Epworth Sleepiness Scale is looking at specifically, is there excessive daytime sleepiness features? If you remember what I had told you, about 25% of students should be having sleep problems. This is more than double, right? In terms of sleepiness, we don't have normative data for pediatrics, but in the adult population, we expect 4 to 20% of adults would be sleepy, and this is right in line with that. The problem with that is we expect children to be more resilient to that type of phenotype of sleepiness related to sleep problems. And so in total, 66% had pathologic scores on one of these. Next slide. So if you remember, in December 2020, when we did the first round of surveys, we had 17% of students who had pathologic responses. But when we looked at the April responses, I'm sorry, the way that this came up, it kind of clicked out of order, but it showed that there was only 15%. And so I said, great, right? We're seeing that there's an interval decrease. The problem is it's a bit of a moving target, and this is part of the reason why some of this data is important to know so that programs can be developed around it. What we found were, of this 15%, 30% were persistent sleepy, meaning that they were sleepy here and sleepy there. 70% were new sleepy. So we repeated this in April of this past year, of 2021. What this tells me is that those 30% who are persistently sleepy probably have a very, very worrisome sleep disorder, such as something like narcolepsy or a central disorder of hypersomnolence or very severe obstructive sleep apnea. Those who were 70% who were new sleepy may be individuals who just have developed new extracurriculars or other things that are competing with their ability to achieve the right number of hours of sleep. Next slide. So how can we engage our students? So this is just going over some of the things we're currently doing. We have a website, wakeupandlearn.org. We have collectible palm cards, which, sorry. Yes, this is just an example of them. They literally are palm cards, and they're intended to be collectible. We actually hired an 18-year-old illustrator to create new characters, which part of the contest this year is going to be naming the characters. And on the front, it's really kind of giving the ability of the character to be almost an avatar for the teen of what it's like to experience a problem. So it says, struggling to fall asleep, waking up during the night, sleeping in too long, you may need to reset your body clock. And so this was for the beginning of the year because many of them are going to be experiencing circadian dysfunction because they went from a free sleep schedule to now a forced schedule. And on the back is giving them tips and tricks. So again, trying to meet students to what is engaging. We had recorded interviews, so the guidance counselor and myself would do kind of Zoom call interviews, and then they would post it on the school's Facebook page. We did the letters to families, and we're in the current process of developing a sleep ambassador program. I'm a big fan of peer mentorship. And so we know that it works. And so it's one thing for me as an adult to tell students that sleep is important. It's another thing for their peers to tell them that it's important and how to access it. We have a lot of different things that are planned for this upcoming year. Everything from school-based activities, games, contests, et cetera, and developing some fun incentives. Next slide. This is just the example of the website. I do like to call out the fact that this is a program that is free to schools and that because of Jazz Pharmaceuticals and Janet Weiss Children's Hospital's donations to being able to make the program possible and the continued growth of it. I will tell you that in addition to doing this in middle school and high school, we have plans to expand it to colleges, and Bucknell has already signed on to be a part of the program as well. Next slide. Thank you. Yes.
Stated that they stayed up.
Sure. Sure. So in the surveys that we do that are surveillancing, don't go into the level of detail to assess that. In the one that is more comprehensive, we do start to ask some of those deeper questions. The way this program is that the initial phase of the surveys are through an opt-out option. So the families get letters home saying, your child are going to get these surveys. If you don't want them to take them, please sign us and return it. When we're asking for that more detailed information, because it does include questions about depression, anxiety, it does include questions about substance use and abuse, we then are asking for consent from the parent to allow the student to participate. And so that will be information that we are looking to continue to grow. In terms of what we know nationally, that's a major problem that we're seeing in adolescents. Number one, because adolescents biologically have something called a delayed sleep phase, meaning their melatonin is being produced later, around 11 p.m. is their typical sleep onset, but most of them are engaging in things to create them having a later onset of that, exactly of what you're describing. And so that is a universally very, very challenging problem, which we do address on our website as well as with like our little cards and things like that. That's actually a great idea. That's a great idea.
Because my grandson brought one in the other. Old son would probably want that.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions that I can answer? Yes.
If students want to participate in this, do you have any room for volunteers? Do students, can they sign up for something? Do you do some functions or something?
So the way that we typically have done it is that when we've applied it in a school district, we make it so that it's universally available. So the way that we launched it at Montgomery School District, and again, we can tailor it a bit to every school district, is that there was a decision to have the surveys given on a certain day. And on that day, after we had sent out the opt-out letters, et cetera, on the website, we created a link for the students to go to. So what Montgomery decided to do is say, third period for 10 minutes, all the students are going to log in and they're going to go on to this. When we are doing the surveys, it goes through a HIPAA-compliant website called RedCap that is able to provide the surveys and collect the information. That keeps it so that their information is secure. When they did that, they used their school-based emails that allowed us to then follow up with them if there was pathologic responses to let them know, hey, look out for additional information. We're going to ask you to contribute. We have revised this some also to give some feedback to the students that, hey, you're doing great. Keep up the great work. Here's some, again, some tips and tricks of how you maintain normal, healthy sleep.
Thank you. It's a beautiful presentation.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment. Thank you, Dr. Morse. I think as we continue to learn more about how we can improve the social and emotional learning for our students, this is just another thing that helps the district to meet our goals. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next presentation is by Dr. Bickhart regarding Keystone and PSSA data.
All right, good evening, everyone. While there's, of course, a lot of detail inside of a data presentation for the district, we will attempt to go through this fairly quickly. Some of the data is just more to look at, and we can discuss if we need to. Especially, Jeff, at the end, when we get to the AP scores, I'll have you just kind of scroll through those scores, and we can stop at any point. I think what's important is we're about to provide data that absolutely shows the impact of COVID in the world, in our schools. Good or bad, I'm not familiar with a lot of districts who have chosen to transparently put out the data, especially in this, but I think it's important that we see two things. Yes, there has been a significant impact, but I also think we need to look at the perspective of where we are as a district and what we were able to accomplish in relation to some of the other districts in our area. So we'll dive in here. A lot of numbers coming at you, but we'll try and dissect them a little bit. So what we're going to show is the PSSA data. Keep in mind it's 2021 data. You're going to see a gap. There is not 2020 data, so you will see that. And then as well as all the high school achievement data, Keystone exams, AP exams, Spanish exams. The one thing to note is in the APs, there are some that did have assessments in 2020. So there is some data that crosses all years, even through COVID. And then just a little bit on kind of where the measures are when it comes to accountability. So we'll continue on, and this dives into it. So first piece of data you're going to see is going to show you some of the early numbers. So go ahead, Jeff. Right there we start with math. All right, it gives you perspective inside of each year. Notice the gap in 2020. So you see some numbers that have definitely declined. You've seen some that actually held fairly consistent inside of the length of impact COVID has had on us. All right, Jeff, continue. And the reason I'm going to have Jeff continue to move is it gets a little deeper into the specifics of these. It shifted on us, Jeff, when we download it. So continue on. That's a cohort data that has specifics on how it aligns. It must have, when we downloaded here, shifted over. PSSA English Language Arts. I would say, in comparison, we've had a little bit more success inside of language arts. Give you a few minutes to kind of see over the course of the years. Okay, Jeff, continue on. I'll have you slide by that one. We can look at the cohorts later. So this is what I want to point out. I think this presentation, of course, you can see is the history of data. So it's something that was created years ago, and I've just added to it to show where we're at. So you look at math in third grade. Although percentages go down, in relation to where we are within the IU, we've gone up. So again, that balance of the reality of COVID with what our teachers were able to do in a very difficult situation and what we were able to do with our families who were committed to what we could do, whether it was virtual or in person. I will point this out. Not everybody shared their data from the districts. So this, even though there is 17 districts in the IU, including the VOTEC, reporting here is between 11 and 12 at any given time inside of the PSSA data. And a few of them actually came in the past day or two. All right, Jeff, continue on. So there's ELA in grade 3. You can see 5th to 2nd, fairly consistent in the percentage. Jeff, keep going. You can just kind of scroll through. You'll see some of the drops, but you can continue to look at that rank within the IU. It gives you the perspective of what we were still able to accomplish in a difficult time in this area. Continue on, Jeff. ELA in reading, I think that's an interesting one in 4th grade. In the middle ground there, 5th out of 11. We have already recognized there are some things we want to do differently in ELA when it comes to that in 3rd through 5th. We've made some shifts in some of the staff that is there as well. We're hoping beyond COVID, that's a key piece of this as well. Continue on. Math in 5th grade, first in the IU at this point. Again, reduction in percentage, but still a lot of great things going on. Continue on, Jeff. ELA as well. And there's some great points there that we're still at 74% inside of everything that has happened. Without a doubt, when you look across the scores that came in and you look at other districts, middle school was tough. And it makes sense. These kids probably at a very trying time are at home trying to learn, bouncing back and forth. So the data really shows that. But again, I keep pointing out the rank. So we'll continue. Jeff, go ahead. You can scroll through a little bit here. Continue on. And please, if there's anything you want to stop and discuss specifically, we can. I just don't want to take too much of the time, but I think the numbers are there to show. That, if you want to go back to the grade 8 math, that was really, when I looked at the data across our IU, that was interesting to look at. There's 10% and 12%, and it's evident that there was a major hit there. You can see even across the data over years, we did just make an adjustment in our math curriculum going into this year. It's not a thorough change. We went from Ready PA to Ready Classroom. In talking with Shelley Craig, who is one of our leads in math at the middle school, they have seen so many of the math programs now are word-based, right? They're reading intensive. So one of the things they've commented on is that they feel like some of the information we are teaching now is it's more accessible to students at a reading level. Still high-level content, still pushing kids. But again, we're also working through the scope and sequence of our math plans as we go from the middle school to the high school.
Dr. Bickart, I have a question for you,
Sure.
sir. What year did we start using iReady Math? In
Oh.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
So okay, I can do that. We are
It's
3 years left at the, so I'm going to say 3 years ago.
1920.
Was it 1920? Because we were already had it at the primary in Valley 2 years prior to that. The contracts are about 2 years off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll continue on. Reading in ELA. What I'm excited about in ELA is, especially at the middle schools, we've just adopted a new series that we approved last year. Part of that was simply our resources were outdated, and we weren't going to have access to a lot of things digitally. So I feel like with the quality of the teachers we have, the work they've been doing, what we're seeing here, we just had an ELA meeting today, and they feel pretty confident in the materials they're using and what it's providing students. So we continue to hope to see gains there. So Jeff, continue on there. I think this is it. You have heard me say, I think we need to do more in science. So this is almost countering that, because it's saying, oh, we're doing great in fourth grade. Here's what I think happens. Fourth grade has a PSSA science test. I think it's great. I know our fourth grade teachers, in talking to them, spend a lot of time during the fourth grade year getting them ready based on the content they're aware of. Here's where my concern goes, if you go to the next piece. I think this is an evident piece of COVID, that drop into 8th grade. I think part of the problem there is content continues. There's more that should have been expected by the time they get to that 8th grade PSSA, and we're just trying to build content in science beginning in 4th, 5th, really 4th and 6th, 7, 8, because it's so inconsistent in 3, 4, and 5. And that's something we've identified, and we're piloting, a science program right now in Liberty Valley in 2 3rd grade, 2 4th, 2 5th, to try and bring continuity so we have a more thorough and robust science program by the time they get to 8th grade and then into the high school. So we'll continue on. Keep in mind, Keystone data. PSSAs were eliminated in 2011, so when you look at this data from the years past, then Keystones came in Algebra 1, Bio, and English Lit. So when the data comes up, you'll see that. Another major thing to remember is Act 158 is now really getting pushed through, meaning there's going to be different ways to get to graduation. That is something Mr. Wynn, Mr. Verholick, and I have discussed. We're going to be meeting with the counselors because we've got to look at each individual student to ensure their pathway to graduation beyond just Keystone exams. So we'll continue. Second, only 7 and in some cases 8 schools were willing to provide their Keystone data. The good news is you'll see our data is within that pretty significant. I would also argue even if other schools provided their data, we would still be pretty high up there. Yeah, there was a drop in math. I think the math teachers told me they saw that coming based on what they were seeing last year, but still second within the schools that are provided data. The next 2 pieces I think are pretty powerful at this point, even though their numbers went down. We are number 1 right now when it comes to Keystone Lit. Like I said, I was with some of the ELA teachers today. Yes, they're happy we're 1 in the area. They're not happy that the score went down. And they told me that will go back up. So I like the attitude there. But again, great work inside of a very difficult time. And then when we look at Bio, again, 78% there. I don't know why the rankings weren't provided previously, but when I looked at comparison to the other districts, we were first there as well. So of the 3 Keystones right now, when you look at our performance for our high school, 2 of 3 rank first in this area. So we'll continue on. I'm just going to have Jeff go through these. These are our please stop. If there's something you want to stop, these are our AP. This is what we did in APs over the course of time. And again, please pay attention that a lot of APs still happened in 2021. Maybe our numbers went down a little bit and who took them, but we were still trying to get kids who wanted access, and this is something we continue to talk about, right? We want to make our high school very accessible to all kids, including these kids. We want these to be accessible, but we also want courses that meet all kids' needs. So it just shows that this is still a focus. Yeah, the blank is just me. I don't think anybody took it because you're going to see that dive in a little bit here and there. I made one error here. That's actually 2020 data. That's in the 2021. There was not data for 21. I apologize. Again, a lot of, may only be 1 or 2 kids, but kids that wanted access to these materials and these courses are getting them.
So when it says one kid, that's
Right.
just a test, not
Correct.
necessarily that there was only one student
Correct.
taking the course.
Great point. What Mrs. Fish is referencing there is these are kids that chose to take the AP exams.
Exams instead of attending.
So based on, they can take the course, they don't always have to take the AP exam.
So
That-
the one that showed European history that only
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to ask if you want to comment on that. I was going to say, is that an independent study?
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So taking the test is optional.
So you're utilizing.
Most do, right? Most do over time.
You're utilizing AP courses through option?
Of course, a lot of the ones that are the higher numbers are our courses, of course. I mean, Jeremy, is there anything as there's the scrolling, any comments you have on any of the data that? I said it, but I just think it's important. We did, inside of a very difficult situation through these 2 years, high school teachers persevered. They did what they could to make sure kids had access to all of these opportunities. Right. And AP Chem ended in 2019. Is that correct, Jeremy? That's why that new teacher piece was there, I think. That was prior data that was part of this from previous years. But I didn't want to take anything out to give you the historical concept of all the APs that are available. Some of these were independent studies from years ago, but again, they were part of the historical data pieces from previous years. A lot of APs. World language ones here. Great team of Spanish teachers. And that's where this is going to lead into the National Spanish Exam, which I had to learn a little bit about. Mr. Keller and I met the other day, and he was talking me through this. So there's various levels, of course, of Spanish. And then each of these, when it says gold, silver, bronze, deals with the percentile. So if a student is in the gold percentile, they're in the top 10% of all kids that took the test. He also brought up that we had 120 total kids take the National Spanish Exam. What he brought up, I thought that was fascinating, is less kids took it this year. So to get to be in the gold standard, you had to score pretty well. And we had a handful of students. I think he said there was 5 students who really were in that gold. You can see there by the numbers that were just phenomenal. So, and again, they're the different levels of Spanish and how students scored. And there's 2 more levels, yep. Yeah, it was 5 total students we had that scored in some level of gold at their Spanish level. So, all right, couple, to conclude this here, these are the things to keep in mind, right? The history of this. NCLB led into where AYP came. This is where accountability started. Turned into the S Act. We've now gone then into Act 82, which was teacher evaluation, to the Future Ready PA Index, which then started giving us performance profiles and scores. And now we've added Act 13, which is building off Act 82 when it comes to teacher evaluation. What I'll tell you there, I think just to put in your minds, is we're used to data having multiple levels. Teacher observation, practice, a building level score. What we're hearing is that building level scores are not going to exist until next year. That could change. We're also hearing that another layer of this is what's called the teacher slow teacher SPM, student performance measure. That is happening. But then the other part of this is, so what did I say there? It would be building score, SPM, slow, PVOS. Because 2020 did not exist with testing in PSSAs, the rolling 3-year average they need to add that aspect is not going to happen now till, they're saying till 2024. So they're not going to say, hey, let's use 18, 19, and then 21. They're going to say, nope, we got to wait till we have 21, 22, 23 to get a rolling PVOS average again. So there are so many moving parts when it comes to the federal legislation, when it comes to measures and accountability. But that's where Act 13 is bringing that into this right now. And we'll finish, I just explained that with the performance profile. You know, that's that score, right? That's that score everybody looks for that ranks. And they're saying right now we probably are not going to see those till next year. There's another data point, and that's when parents should get their individual data in January is what we're being told. If they make changes then, we'll let you know. But at this point, I'm not hearing it will. Because some parents have asked, hey, where's my child's score? I usually get a mailing, and they just haven't put them out yet. Jeff, go ahead. Talked about the Future Ready PA. If you go to that right now, that's where a lot of people will go if they're looking at any scores. It does, right now the data that's in there is all from 19. They have not updated that yet as well. And then finally, I think a big question that comes from this is ESSER funding implications, right? We're seeing issues with loss of learning and all of that. And I think a couple things we've just talked about as administrators, and then Mrs. Ely, Dr. Boyle, and I, is we understand that these implications and what we're doing with some of our ESSER funding over the course. And a lot of this has gone through committee meetings, whether it's curriculum or finance or in board meetings. What have we really tried to stay focused on is keeping our staff. I think it's evident our staff that is here has done a phenomenal job of doing whatever they can to keep data, you know, to keep students moving, to provide quality data for Danville. So we're keeping our staff there. SEL has been a focus in many layers of how we've used our funding, technology and Chromebooks and you know, hotspots and all of that, programming. And then, you know, we're talking about funding and how we can use it for curriculum areas to continue to expand what we're doing to give quality materials to students. And I think that, you know, the 3 words we talk about are prepare, prevent, respond when it comes to all of this, and we're doing our best. So with that, a lot of numbers. Leave it at that. Questions, thoughts? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bickert.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is consent agenda items. The board will take action to approve the consent agenda items, including items 10.1, 10.2, 13.1, and 13.2. Can I get a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Mrs. Edmeades?
Yes.
Mrs. Fish?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch?
Yes. Passes. Item number 7, the board will take action to approve the AIA with KCBA for the Liberty Valley and Danville Primary School renovations as presented pending solicitor review, which we are done with the solicitor review. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
A second?
Mrs. Fish?
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Reichard?
Yes.
Mrs. Edmeades?
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch?
Yes. That takes us to item 12. Is that correct?
12-1, yes, sir.
12.1. All right. 12.1, the board will take action to approve the following department leads with a yearly stipend of $800 or $20 per hour for 40 hours. Tiffany Bogart for Social Studies K through 5. Amanda, is it more? STEM K through 5, and Guy Moses Technology 3 through 5. Get a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
I
Thank you.
second.
Thank you.
Dr. Gatachu?
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon?
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmeades, Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes. Item 12.2, the board will take action to approve hiring attorney Scott Eder of Eder Law Firm to provide Title IX investigation services as needed at a rate of $175 per hour. Thank you.
I'll second.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmeades, Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes. On to 13.3. The board will take action to approve the proposal for solicitor services for the Beard Legal Group to serve as solicitor to the Danville Area School District for the next 3 years, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmeades, Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes. Item 13.4, the board will take action to approve the agreement for services between the Danville Area School District and Miss Donna Christensen as a board-certified behavior analyst to perform the services of consult to the autistic support classroom teacher regarding student behavior needs as the district may require, effective October 27th, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, as presented. Motion, please.
I motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second?
Thank you.
May I ask a question before we vote?
Certainly.
Absolutely.
Is there a reason why we're not using services from the IU?
In discussing this, Mrs. Christensen's familiar with the classroom with the children, and we feel that she's the best fit for that. Her services are probably cheaper than the IU's as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Reichert,
Yes.
Mrs. Edmeades, Mrs. Fish,
Yes.
Dr. Gatachu,
Yes.
Mrs. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Gordon,
Yes.
Mr. Kirsch.
Yes. Nothing in transportation. Item 15, board concerns and items for the next agenda meeting. Are there any?
I don't know if this is a concern or not, but the concern I'd have is on Fridays, we give out a lot of food bags.
Okay.
And we have a lot of problems on school buses. They trash our buses on Fridays. I don't know if there's any guidance can be put in that I don't know how you're gonna stop it, but it becomes annoying.
By trash, do you mean just leave garbage and?
They open up a bowl of Cheerios, and the next
Okay.
bowl of Cheerios, and the next granola bar, and step on them, smash them, whatever you wanna do. I don't know how we stop it.
Students are directed not to open those bags until they get home, but obviously that's not the case. So we'll have to look into that, okay?
Thank you.
Do those bags have names on them?
No.
No, they don't.
I don't know if they could name them seriously and put them in like a front seat and pick them up as they get off the bus.
Good luck with that thought.
Any other board concerns or comments?
Public comment or?
No, we're not to the public comment yet.
All right, I wanted to read a statement. I can either do that now or during the public comment.
Now would be the right time, man.
I would like to read a statement in response to the letter to the editor written to the Press Enterprise printed on Saturday, October 23rd. The letter was written by 4 candidates on the ballot for school board directors next year. They stated that they believe there is a, quote, lack of leadership on our school board and within our administration, end quote. I would like to very directly refute this statement as someone with firsthand experience in working with both the board and the administration since my appointment to fill a seat vacated this year. The letter contained a number of unfounded accusations without any specific examples. Prior to becoming a member of this board, and to this day, I observe a board that worked through an extremely challenging 2 years. Board members and administrators worked to keep the social and emotional needs of the students at the center of all decisions. Danville Area School District was commended by Geisinger for the way that they worked through the pandemic restrictions to ensure children had the best opportunity to work through the challenges presented at that time. While much of the public understands little about the challenges school boards face in making decisions affecting families and students on a daily basis, it is even more difficult to work through some of these challenges that this board and administration were presented with during the pandemic restrictions of the last 18 months. I observed the administration and board dedicate a measurable amount of time doing what was necessary to make it through mandated school closures and subsequent efforts to address the learning loss caused in order to ensure our students have the best possible chance to succeed now and in the future. And I would add that the data that Dr. Bickhart presented relative to local districts is a testament to what our district was able to accomplish for our students during that time. Another disturbing statement in the letter was that the candidates have, quote, fear for the academic and fiscal future of our district, end quote. I would note that there is zero evidence to support such an allegation, particularly for anyone who has attended or tuned into any of the board meetings over the last 2 years. As I mentioned in my board interview on May 11th, the Danville Area School District is fortunate to have Bobby as our business manager. I continue to be impressed with her organization and communication on behalf of the district with respect to our ongoing budget matters. And I know that the other board members concur. Coming out of the last 18 months, other districts reported unexpected shortfalls and concerns with being able to retain staffing, but these issues did not occur in our district. To all who have been attending or tuning into our school board meetings, our district has strong financial management. There was also an allegation in the letter that the district does not release studies for facility projects. And again, I would correct the record that since I've been a board member, and before that as a community member, I can confirm the board meetings have consisted of presentations from the district's partners performing these studies that fully explain the proposed facility projects. I'd also like to note that the board is losing Mrs. Bonnie Edmeades and Mrs. Christina Fish, and to acknowledge their service as board members whose terms are ending this year. Mrs. Edmeades is a dedicated community advocate and has always held the best interests of our students, schools, and families in the highest regard during her time as a board member. Mrs. Fish is an educational professional whose experience in helping our district navigate challenges and her expertise in addressing our students' social and emotional needs has been instrumental to our board and our community. Mrs. Edmeades and Mrs. Fish will be greatly missed, and as a board member, I would like to thank them for their service. Unfounded accusations do not amount to facts, and the progress that this board has made in meeting its goals speaks for itself. I would like to state again that it's been a privilege to serve on the board with such dedicated individuals. I would also like to thank the many members of the community who have recognized the difficult task these board members take on and who have respectfully shared their appreciation, both in agreement and disagreement, in an effort to ultimately do what is best for our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Very well said.
Thank you for your service, both of you.
Any other board comments or concerns? All right. This is the second public comment time. This is open to public comment for a max of 3 minutes. Are there any public comments? Yes, come on forward. Please remember to state your name and address, please.
You have to turn it on.
Is it
Press the
green?
button.
Just press the
And
button.
a red light will come on.
Green light.
There you go,
Oh,
son.
red-
There you
red
go.
li-
Oh,
that
you turned
was-
it off.
It's up at the top.
That's the one.
There it
with
is.
the
Oh,
red
yeah.
one.
Do you mind if I take my mask
No,
off?
absolutely.
Okay. My name is Roseanne Benfer. I live at 132 Thistle Way. And anyways, I've never spoken in front of the board before, so I apologize if I'm a little nervous. I'm here in support of Tina Bartholomew. There was a lot of great people at the last school board meeting that came forward and made some very fantastic points and showed enormous support for Mrs. Bartholomew. And I wanted to do the same. I have a daughter, Lauren. She is currently in 8th grade. She has been under the direction of Tina Bartholomew for the past 2 years in cross-country. She's actually, if you turn and look at that picture, she has a number on her jersey. She's holding the trophy that they just came back from with Lackawanna. And she has, at all the invitationals they had this year, she has medaled, and she has done that because of Tina Bartholomew's direction. She has been an amazing coach to these kids, and I wanted to talk about just her in general and just our history of how we got to know her when we came into the school district. She was a Spanish teacher for both of my children, and she noticed that my older daughter, Lauren, who, like I said, you see in the picture up there, in 8th grade, she noticed and talked to Tina about running. And at the time, she didn't know that Tina was coaching in any capabilities or anything. And she mentioned to Tina that she was running some 5Ks. And Tina took an interest in that, and she started helping her. I remember there was a time, it was right, Mifflinburg 5K always has theirs on 4th of July. Mrs. Bartholomew is always one of the top finishers before she had her surgery. And she finished, and she came right over to me, and she said, Mrs. Benfer, she's like, Roseanne, she's like, where's Lauren at? Did she finish yet? And I said, no, she has not. She's still someplace out there. Well, in true Tina fashion, she turned right around after she was done with her race, and she went onto that course, and she found Lauren, and she ran in with her. And that's when her and Lauren started running together when they could. She would come for preseason practices with the high school when she was in 6th grade. She ran other 5Ks where Tina was there. There is not a single place in this community that you can go to or in this region. And if you
You have
talk
30
to,
seconds, sorry.
if you speak to anybody about running or anything, you're going to hear Tina Bartholomew's name, what an amazing coach she is, how she's integral to all these programs, how she's done an amazing job in spring track and field and cross country. And she's been yanked out in the middle of the season with these kids that have really, I think, suffered because of that, and they didn't know why it was happening. It wasn't really explained to them until later, and they're really missing this coach. She's the future of Danville for coaching, and she's done an amazing job so far. And
Your-
anyways,
Your time is done.
okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other public comments?
I'd like to make a comment. One is in support of Christina's statements and also my own experience with what I saw with the other candidates back in last Wednesday when you had meet candidates. And I did not see any level of interest from these people. I did not see any level of depth of knowledge from these people. I gave my statement to Press Enterprise, but I think I gave it a little late and it's not going to be published. So I will post it on my Facebook page. I hope you're familiar with that, and hopefully you will visit and see what I said. But I appreciate Christina for your statement. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Item 17, adjournment.
Make that motion.
All in
second.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Who second? Somebody second?
Yeah, I did.
Kyle did.
Yes.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.